Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. First, I want to thank and recognize the others joining us today. Chelsea Globitz-Gabot, sorry about that, Representative Cedric Frazier, Tony McGarvey from the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Tony is also on the Brooklyn Park City Council. Mike Wild from the Fair Contracting Foundation. And I also want to note that Dan McConnell from the Minnesota Building and Construction Trades Council had hoped to be here, but was unable to make it at the last moment. And I also want to name a few others who are deeply supportive of this work and are named in the press release you have, but for various reasons were unable to join us this afternoon. Madeline Lohman from the Advocates for Human Rights, Brianna Kemp and Seytoul, Alberta Gillespie, City of Minneapolis, Department of Human Rights, Brian Elliott and the SEIU Minnesota State Council, and Vina Iyer and the Immigrant Law Center. Hennepin County and the state of Minnesota are fortunate to have all of you involved in this work, and I'm grateful for your partnership. If a worker steals from his or her employer, there are going to be consequences ranging from termination to criminal charges. That is not the case when workers are preyed upon by their employers. This is especially true when workers are particularly vulnerable. Everyone in Hennepin County has a right to be safe at work. Every worker has a right to the wages they've earned. But across the country and in this county, too often vulnerable workers are preyed upon by their employers. This is unacceptable and cannot be tolerated. That's why our office has created a new worker protection unit to end these practices. Companies and employers that steal from their employees or risk their safety are going to be held accountable in Hennepin County. Wage theft, unsafe working conditions, and other forms of exploitation are impacting workers. These are our family members, our friends, our neighbors. We have an obligation to keep them safe, and this unit is a step forward in fulfilling that obligation. This new unit, led by Brian Walsh, will help identify, investigate, and prosecute crimes committed by employers against workers in Hennepin County. Brian is a nationally recognized leader in this work. As Director of Labor Standards Enforcement in Minneapolis, Brian helped implement a higher minimum wage, wage theft prevention rules, and paid sick leave protections across the city. His team collected over $1.4 million in previously unpaid wages and damages owed to thousands of workers. His effectiveness and creativity in combating workplace violations is recognized nationwide. Our community is fortunate to have several dedicated leaders and organizations who are deeply committed to protecting workers. Many of them are here today. The County Attorney's Office has led a labor advisory council that included many in our community who are working on these issues. And I want to recognize Jim Farrell on the end there, a longtime attorney at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office who helped start that council. Jim has been active on worker protection issues for a long time and is also here today. Thank you, Jim, for your work. Today's announcement builds on these efforts. Brian Walsh's proven leadership on behalf of working families will help us expand protections for workers and make sure workers are treated with dignity and respect in the workplace. I recently introduced him to the Hennepin County Police Chiefs. They were able to meet Brian. We had 4 meetings with them, and he was able to connect, and they were extremely enthusiastic and started asking him questions about situations they had. And I know the Hennepin Police Chiefs are going to be great partners going forward. Our workforce plays a vital role in building thriving communities. We are proud to protect it. It is long overdue. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Hennepin County Attorney's Office's new Worker Protection Unit Manager, Brian Walsh, for a few words. Sorry.
Good afternoon. Labor and employment practices in our modern economy are evolving faster than ever, and the legal systems regulating them, of course, must keep up. A maze of legal entities, contractors, subcontractors, independent contractors, joint employers, algorithms, and the gig economy now touch the goods and services we use every day. Efficiency and innovation are good. However, unfortunately, when in the wrong hands, bad actors can manipulate them to intentionally violate the worker protections that have been relied upon for generations. Vulnerable workers, even children, too often now experience criminal exploitation, including rampant, intentional wage theft, trafficking, hazardous working conditions without protections, and other fraud to the tune of tens of millions of dollars across Hennepin County every year. How are mom and pop shops and workers supposed to compete or protect themselves? If fraud, wage theft, and exploitation are left unchecked, everyone is harmed, including the vast majority of employers playing by the rules and doing right by their employees. The ultimate effect on families, communities, and public safety is immeasurable. This is why we are establishing a worker protection unit, and I'm honored to be a part of it. When worker protections are violated with impunity and inequality allowed to fester, faith in our institutions and the fabric that binds us together can start to fray. Alongside our partners, we have a collective duty to protect the most vulnerable workers. Labor is not just another cost of doing business. It's not a cost on a spreadsheet. Labor is people. Workers are people. We are going to use all the legal tools necessary to protect them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Globitz-Gabio, and you have the press release, so I don't need to spell it. I am president at the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation of the AFL-CIO, and we are so excited. We congratulate the county attorney, Mary Moriarty, on the establishment of this new worker protection unit. This is so critical to workers during this time. We all know wage theft is already illegal. So our job is to enforce and make sure that workers know their rights. And they did the right thing by hiring Brian Walsh for this position. He has a track record of being innovative and effective in this work. Part of the effectiveness of combating wage theft in our communities is making sure that workers are educated about their rights and know how to advocate for their rights. That is a very important piece of this equation for protecting workers. And Brian was able to redefine what enforcement means in labor standards in his time at the city of Minneapolis. And I'm so excited to see him do it here with the county. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Wild with the Fair Contracting Foundation, and we represent the construction industry in fighting wage theft and prevailing wage violations. And we applaud the Hennepin County Attorney's Office from reversing the long process of turning theft against employees from a civil claim into a criminal claim. And with the leadership of Brian Walsh, we look forward to criminal enforcement when the employer does in fact shortchange or steals from their employees. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony McGarvey. I'm a painter by trade and currently serve as the West District City Council member in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. We are just excited to know that Hennepin County is taking this issue seriously, and they could have not found a better man than Brian Walsh to work not only to protect the most vulnerable workers among us, but to level the playing field for legitimate employers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm DFL State Representative Cedric Frazier, and I am the Vice Chair of the Minnesota House Judiciary Committee, and I represent the cities of New Hope and Crystal at the state capitol. First, I want to say thank you to all of the labor leaders and the coalition of folks, including workers, that led us to this moment to get this done. Job well done, and it couldn't happen soon enough. You know, I received a phone call in November of 2022 from then County Attorney-elect Mary Moriarty, asking if I would serve on her transition team. As a lawyer who has specialized in both criminal as well as labor and employment law, I accepted the opportunity because I knew of the great potential the Hennepin County Attorney's Office had in using all of its tools, both civil and criminal, to protect our most vulnerable workers. I've been looking forward to this day ever since then. Wage theft is a pervasive issue in our state. When employers steal the wages of workers, the people who construct our buildings and homes, who keep our spaces clean and sanitary, who work in our favorite restaurants and stores, they're stealing money of our neighbors who need to pay their rent and to put food on the table for their kids. And let me be clear, the workers who keep our state moving forward have a right to the wages they earn and to be protected and respected on their job, period. This new worker protection unit is the first of its kind in Minnesota, but it should be a model that other offices across the state and country should look to. I have known Brian Walsh for a number of years, and I admire his innovative work at the City of Minneapolis. I'm glad he stepped up to lead this opportunity, to lead this important work at the county level. We're all thankful for it. This new unit is an important step forward by the Hennepin County Attorney to prevent the exploitation of workers. On behalf of my neighbors that have experienced wage theft, and on behalf of all Minnesotan workers that will benefit from this new tool, I say thank you.
I wanted to recognize one other person who's standing behind me, and that's Jen White. She is the Hennepin County Attorney's Office Director of Community Affairs. This is a particularly important unit because we need to get the word out there to workers who may not know they're being exploited. We need to develop trusted relationships with our communities so that they know that they can come to us and that we will help them. With that, I'll open it up for questions. Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the scope of the wage theft problem in Hennepin County. Do you have any numbers and data, any idea?
I'll have Brian answer that question.
Dee, thank you very much for that question. Wage theft is a very much an underreported violation, an underreported crime. But there's a lot of studies out there, or a handful of studies that tried to get their arms around it. And the Economic Policy Institute has done a number of things, and those are probably the most often cited studies. It's impossible to quantify precisely, but when you look at those studies, it amounts to tens of millions. Another way that it's measured is by looking at payment under the minimum wage, and that similarly is in the millions of dollars every year, just in Hennepin County alone, and tens of millions is a conservative estimate.
Max?
Yeah, part of the issue or challenge with bringing wage theft cases is a lack of investigatory know-how and capability, and so I'm wondering how you're addressing that issue with the creation of this unit.
That's a great question. We know that investigatory expertise is something that we can all improve on. And these are just the kind of cases that some law enforcement agencies just don't have the resources to do. What Jim Farrell and what Brian is doing, what Brian does have relationships with the Department of Commerce, for instance, and other entities that can investigate these cases. We are also in the process of hiring an investigator to help out with this. And I mentioned that Brian met the police chiefs in Hennepin County a couple of weeks ago. They were already asking, they were bringing up situations and they were saying, I'm not quite sure what this is. So part of our plan here is to have Brian be a point person to be working with all of law enforcement to identify what they are seeing and direct it to the appropriate agency that can do a thorough investigation.
I'm wondering if you could comment on the interpreter strike. Sorry, it's a bit off topic, but somewhat related because I'm assuming lots of cases that involve worker exploitation may also need an interpreter, and you have 125 signing on to this in support of the work stoppage. So have you seen that affect your office at all, the cases that you're bringing, or has the effect been small?
No, Hennepin County has staff interpreters, and so they have been putting in extra work to help. I think the broader issue for us is that many of the people who are the vulnerable workers, English may not be their first language. So how do we get the message out to them to make sure that they know you are being victimized. Brian speaks Spanish, fluent Spanish, and we do have a lot of staff who speak other languages as well. So one of the things we will be doing and developing is that community engagement using staff who speak other languages as well, because that is a barrier. We also, by the way, we have developed a new UNT visa policy, which should help vulnerable victims be able to come forward and cooperate in the prosecution. And so we've met with police chiefs from all over the county, and they're very enthusiastic about that as well.
Can you say more if that's giving protection to people without authorization
So-
from deportation?
So one of the things that we see, and law enforcement sees, is that there may be, one of the reasons some people are vulnerable is because they are undocumented. And people know that. People who are undocumented are victims of robberies, they're victims of this type of crime, and they are reluctant to come forward either as victims or as witnesses, and that creates a public safety problem. And so one of the things that we can do to help them is to, there's a process where you can get a T or a U visa, and we can assist in that process. It gives some protection to those workers so that they can feel confident that they will not be deported. And frankly, as a law enforcement tool, we obviously want our witnesses, our victims, to be here to help us prosecute. And we can give you more information on that in detail.
Since
Eric.
we've got off topic, County Attorney, there were some pretty strong words that came yesterday from the attorney representing the state trooper, and I wanted to give you a chance to respond, saying that you were out of control and this was open season on law enforcement. As I mentioned, very strong words. Just wanted the community to hear your response to that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned yesterday, we very much value the right to a fair trial. And as I mentioned yesterday, I will not be making any additional comments on that case. We will litigate the case in court, not in the public.
Thanks,
And-
everyone.
So I was just gonna say, we're here today to celebrate what I am really excited about, this brand new worker protection unit and working with the partnership of all of the people up here.
Do have a
Sure.
question on the appointment, sorry. I am curious about what your expectations are for 2024 or 2025 in terms of actual prosecutions that come forward or some sort of other labor action against an employer that is violating the law. You have had people on staff before
Yes.
that did this, so I'm sort of curious about past versus now going forward, now that there's just a need for the unit.
So we've never had a worker protection unit. We've had a case here or there, and some of our partners here have brought us those cases. This is a much more comprehensive approach. And bringing Brian Walsh in here is critical because he has connections to all of the tools that we need to be really effective. So it's an entire unit. In terms of expectations, I know I'll be asking the county board in the next budget season to help us with resources as well. We want the most comprehensive, thorough, effective worker protection unit we can. This is building on the work that's been done in the past and some of the work where Jim Farrell has really been helpful.
And is there any expectation that your office will collaborate with the Attorney General's office? There's some new staffers over there, another new emphasis on dealing with everything from misclassifications to wage theft to, it just seems, I know one is state level, one is county, but I'm just
No,
curious.
you know,
about
in
collaboration.
worker exploitation happens across counties. Our goal here is to work with all of our other partners, whether they are state or county, across Minnesota. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to have Brian on board is he has relationships with all of those people. And so it is important, and I think the public expects of us that we are working with absolutely all of our partners. Thank you.